Welcome to the Uncensored Self Podcast. I am your host, Ryan Gillen, and on this show, ambitious women learn how to create a life they're obsessed with, without the hustle, without the grind, without torturing ourselves, and without following anybody else's rules. This podcast is all about creating our own rules, owning our identity as creator, and hitting every single goal we set for ourselves. Together, we're redefining success on our terms and building lives that look as good as they feel. Let's dive in. All right, guys, welcome back to today's show, where I'm going to talk about the creative versus the competitive plane. And this one is going to feel a little bit esoteric, but I'm going to ask you to stay with me because this is really important. So one of the things that I decided to do in 2025 was to follow Bob Proctor's advice to study instead of read, right? Instead of consume, instead of just reading book after book after book after book, I wanted to read a book and study the book and understand the book and be able to internalize the book and integrate it into me and actually implement what I was learning in the book. So the book that I felt called to study in the first quarter of 2025 is The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles. It's a very short book. I've probably read it 8 to 10 times now. But one of the things that he really talks about is the competitive plane versus the creative plane. And the words that you maybe have heard about this now that are kind of relate to that is like the 3D versus the 5D. If you play on social media, like your current reality versus your future reality, are probably words you've heard. But the way that I understand the creative plane versus the competitive plane is the competitive plane is really based on ego, right? It's the way that our world is set up today that has set us up and doesn't really take into account the fact that we're the creators of our reality, right? It's how the majority of the world moves through the world is in this competitive plane, meaning that it's like dog eat dog. You know, there's a limited pie, there's limited supply. If that guy's rich, I'm poor. If that person wins, I lose. If I win, you lose. It's basically the way that we're taught to move through the world is the competitive plane. And what I'm inviting you to in the work that I do with my clients is inviting you into the creative plane, right? Which is where you are actively the creator of your reality. And it doesn't matter what's happening in the outside world. It doesn't matter what's going on with other people. It doesn't matter what's going on in the economy. You're the one who's actively creating. So that's creative versus competitive. And I just wanted to set that up for you so you really understood this particular episode, because I think that this is so important because as high achievers, as people who like to win, as people who are used to having a scorecard, whether that scorecard is number of deals, number of transactions, bank account, revenue, like whatever number you usually use, we were taught to operate in the competitive plane, and it is challenging to break up with that. So I want to talk about kind of how do we do that? How do we break up with this 3D world that we live in that is teaching us, again, that there is a limited supply, that if I win, if somebody loses, that person, if they've done more deals than me or more transactions than me, then they're my competitor, and get to the place where we're simply creating. And so that's what I'm going to break apart for you today. I actually wrote some notes because this one felt almost a little challenging for me. And I always like to share my journey with you guys because as I share with my clients, I'm not perfect. I'm still doing the work. I don't live in utopia where everything works out for me all of the time. I live in a world where I do the work every single day, and my world gets better and better and better every day. And I deepen my understanding of this work every day, but I'm never going to stand up here and tell you that, hey guys, I have figured it out. And I live in utopia, because we're all here to have a human experience, right? Like that's part of why my soul, our soul, your soul chose to come here, is to have a human experience. You didn't want perfection. If you wanted perfection, you would have stayed in the non-physical. That's where perfection exists. But when you came here to experience life. And if you don't experience contrast, and I have a whole podcast on contrast, but if you don't experience dark, how can you experience life, right? So I'm never going to pretend that I have all the answers. I'm never going to pretend that I'm perfect. I'm never going to pretend that I don't get triggered and I don't spiral or all of these other things. Like that's just not something I'm willing to do. And if people don't want to work with me because my life isn't perfect, then game the fuck on, right? But the people that I work with, or the people who want to work with me, who want to go the path that I have gone, and I'd say that I am in the process and pretty far along in exiting the competitive plane, meaning when it comes to my business, when it comes to making money, when it comes to signing clients, when it comes to how I move through the world, I every day get better and better and better at living on the creative plane. But I say that to you because when this idea came through in meditation, I was like, ooh, I don't know if I'm qualified to do that one. Like this feels a little bit outside of my realm, but that's always why you should, right? When anything starts to tingle at you and it starts to feel like, ooh, maybe that's too much. Like to me, that's a sign to lean in. When we get into that discomfort of being asked to think bigger, play bigger, really step into who I am. And as in this season of life, who I am is this person who is on this incredible journey of learning to break free of all of the stories and the programs and the bullshit that we were taught, so I can actually live my life in a really soft and easy and gentle way. And that's what the creative plane is versus the competitive plane. So let's talk about this from an identity perspective and in which identity you're showing up as, right? The competitive identity or the creative identity. But the competitive, this is how you know that you're operating on the creative or the competitive plane is it's rooted in scarcity, it's rooted in comparison, and it's rooted in improving yourself and earning yourself. This is where every not enough story that you have, I haven't done enough, I'm not working hard enough, I have to earn this, I have to beat that person's doing better than me. Every single one of those stories is coming from the competitive plane. And when you feel like there's never enough money, there's never enough clients, there's never enough time, you can never get everything done that you want to get done in a day, you are operating from your competitive plane, from your human identity, right? Because there's human you and then there's spiritual you or energetic you or non-physical you, whatever resonates with you, right? But you are a soul in a human body. And so when we get into that competition and that scarcity and that not enough, we know that we're playing the human character. And while the human character is great and amazing, and we love the human character, we love the human experience, we want to create from our non-physical, from our spiritual or energetic place. So when you find yourself comparing yourself to other people or feeling like you're constantly behind. I hear this a lot from women. I feel behind. And this could be related to like what's going on in their industry, how long they have been in their business, right? So some people might say, well, I've been in this business for 2 years and, I'm only making X number of dollars or only doing Y number of transactions. And that person started the same time I did, and they're doing better than I am, right? So there's this comparison of like, I'm behind, which then comes to I'm doing something wrong, which then comes into I'm not enough. Right? I'm not enough. I don't know enough. I don't have enough. I'm not experienced enough, whatever your not enough story is. But when we get into that comparison, or even like I see this as women as they go through my programs, right? My program is a 6-week program, and every single week I give my clients a teaching for that particular week, which is the lesson that they're really reflecting on and pulling apart and studying and learning and understanding. And people will get on calls with me and they'll tell me I'm behind. Like there's no such thing as behind, right? There is no such thing as behind because there's no race. There's no finish line. There's no, deadline except for when you die. That's the deadline. So, you're not behind in any capacity. But if you feel yourself feeling even in like this season of life, like I thought by now I'd be more successful or my life would look different, or I'd finally have lost the baby weight, or that my marriage would look different, right? Like there's all these different things. That's all coming from the competitive plane. That's all coming from your humanness. And it's all an illusion. It's not actually true. Right? Another sign that you're in, competitive identity or the competitive plane is that you're measuring success by external validation, right? Awards, ranking, income, right? Like, okay, I feel okay because I'm making an X amount of dollars, or I'm, in this rank in my company, or whatever the case may be, or my job title is this. And if that were to go away or that were to change, your identity would be very much that would not be okay. You would freak out. And that's absolutely positively what happened back to me in 2022 or 21 and 22, when I exited my business partnership after my 7-figure year, and then had this like complete and total identity meltdown of like, who am I without those dollars, right? Like, how does one go from having, $100,000 month to struggling to make payroll? And I didn't know who I was, and I freaked out and I panicked and I spiraled in a really bad way. And I don't ever want that to happen to anyone. But so if that's where that place, like if the business, and obviously, we live in a human world, we live in a 3D world where there's like bills to pay and things like that. I understand that. But if who you are at your core is rocked by the amount of money in your bank account or the amount of money that you're making, like then you're definitely operating from this competitive plane and not from your creative identity. When you operate in urgency, quick, moving fast. One of the things that I love that Waddell says in this book is he talks about that like there's no rush on the creative plane. Like there's nowhere to get. There's no finish line. There's no race. Nobody's clocking your time. Nobody's tracking your performance except for you. Right? So when you operate in that urgency and everything feels hurried, which again, this is a big one. This was huge for me, huge for me, is that I was in a hurry all of the time, whether I was driving my kids to school, whether I was even going to do something fun. It was like, okay, well, I got to leave at this time because I got to get there at this time, and I got to get home at this time because I got to do these things and I got to finish these things because I have to be in the business and I have to work and I have to do this and I have to do that, right? Like living in that constant state of urgency, if you feel like you are constantly rushing, again, you're operating from that competitive plane, you're operating from your human identity, and you're operating from, having to put matter on matter, force and things like that to make things happen for you. When you're waiting and wanting instead of deciding and owning, I have a whole podcast on waiting and wanting, right? But when you're waiting for your moment, for your time, you're just praying and crossing your fingers and hoping that it comes in from this really kind of desperate victim place. Versus, again, deciding I'm the creator of my reality, so let's fucking go, right? So that's how we know. And Especially, I see this a lot when people who are winning, but don't feel like they're winning. And what I mean by that is that you are on paper extremely successful, right? You're hitting goals, or you're making X amount of dollars, or you're a leader in your industry. Most of the women that I work with are leaders in their industry, but they don't feel like they are. They don't feel good enough. They don't feel like they're doing enough. They are worried about actually maintaining their success or maintaining their performance in some capacity. These are all signs, again, that you are coming from this competitive plane. And it's not that we can't on the competitive plane, right? Or I'm sorry, compete. That's not what I wanted to say. And again, normally I would edit that out, but I'm not going to. It's not that you can't win on the competitive plane, because you are winning on the competitive plane. Like, that's the thing. Even if you're all the things that I just listed off for you, if you're doing every single one of those things, it doesn't mean that you're not going to make a lot of money. It doesn't mean that you're not going to hit your goals. What it means is it's going to feel fucking hard. And that's where the hard comes in, and the suffering and the sacrifice in all these different ways, right? That all comes in when we operate from this identity. So I'm never going to tell you that you can't win under these conditions, because you are winning. I was winning on paper, right? But I felt like shit all of the time. It didn't feel good. So I'm not saying that if you don't do what I tell you to do, that you're never going to hit another goal ever again. You're going to hit them. It's just going to fucking be hard, and it's going to hurt, and it's going to suck. And when you achieve it, you're probably not going to feel very good about yourself, about winning in any capacity. So I'm not saying that you can't play in the competitive field. I'm saying that this competitive field is the human experience, and it's a very hard and very challenging experience. This is what typically leads to burnout. This is what typically leads to, being unhealthy. I was chatting with a woman. I have a client. She's an attorney, and, she literally said to me, she's a young woman. And she's like, I don't want to die. I don't want to cause health issues because I'm so stressed out all of the time. Like, that's life on the competitive plane, that we are constantly stressed out all of the time. We don't know how to have fun. We don't know how to laugh. We don't know how to relax. We don't know how to turn it off. And it is, again, I'm not saying that you can't get shit done, because you can, but I'm just saying that it makes things really, really, really hard. And none of us want that, right? And so here's what's also wild about the competitive plane. Like, if you think that success is a competition, you'll always be measuring yourself against something outside of you. Right? And as long as that power is outside of you, that's where, again, the struggle comes into play, and you're never going to feel like enough. There's never going to be a dollar amount, a title, a number of transactions, the size of your team that's finally going to make you feel good if you think that you have to compete for whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. If you feel like you have to prove it or earn it or work hard for it or suffer and sacrifice for it, like, there's never going to be a time where that leads to happiness and fulfillment. And I feel very safe saying that it can lead to happiness and fulfillment, because, again, you can't have an unhappy journey to a happy place. That's one of my favorite Abraham Hicks quotes. I've talked about it a lot. I've given talks around, like, that whole concept, right? Like, if the journey sucks, the entire journey sucks, the destination's probably going to suck too, or it's not going to feel good. Not that I'm saying it sucks making a lot of money, but it's not going to ever make you feel like you are good enough or validate you in any way. It may buy you pretty things, right? It may buy you cool experiences, but if you can't be present and enjoy those experiences, what's the point anyway, right? You're just, like I said, it's just a recipe for burnout. So how do we shift this? What does the creative plane look like? And let's talk a little bit about that, like what it means, how it works, why it works. But the creative plane, the creative identity it's about ownership, right? It's about trust. It's about full body alignment. This is what we mean when we say alignment. A lot of my clients, their word for 2025 was alignment. A lot of women I talk to, that's what they want, is alignment. But the problem is that they say they want alignment, but then they operate in the competitive, right? That's why, again, it feels like shit, because you're like, I want to be aligned and I want to own my reality and I want to be the creator of my reality, but I'm still playing this human game. And as long as you play the human game and you play by the human rules, you can't be in alignment, right? Like, if you're trying to beat somebody else, you are not in alignment. You, again, doesn't mean that you're not going to win. It doesn't mean that you're not going to succeed. It doesn't mean that you're not going to achieve your goal, but you're not in alignment. You're not operating from your creative energy or your creator identity, right? So one of the things, that I love to kind of talk through with my clients is, again, this creator identity. That's what we talk about all about in the Uncensored Self, is how do I own my identity as the creator of my reality? So again, if I'm the creator of my reality, now I'm operating on the creative plane. And when I'm on this creative plane, this is where the ease and the flow and the energy does the work for us instead of effort and force. Competitive plane, effort and force. Creative plane, ease, ease, flow, magnetism, synchronicities, coincidences, opportunities dropping into your lap, random people reaching out to you to work with you, all these different things, right? That's the competitive
plane. And so what we want to do is we want to switch into that creative energy versus effort energy, right? This is where, again, we want our energy to prepay for us what it is that we are looking for instead of having to do it all manually. And that's really what the creative plane is about, is how do I let my energy do the work for me? How do I, really work with God, source, the universe? How do I co-create in a really meaningful way? Because that's what the creative plane is. The creative plane, there is absolutely positively no, there's no competition there, right? Because there's nothing to win. There's nowhere to get. There's no finish line. And that's what's really fun about this. So how do we step into this identity, right? And well, first, I'm going to give you a few more examples. I'm going to stick to my notes this episode, guys, damn it. How this looks in real life, how the creative plane looks in real life. For my real estate agent, right? When you stop pushing and start attracting, if you guys haven't listened to the episode with Courtney Benson, when she talks about one of her mantra is, I don't chase, I attract. Right? And we want to say that. I hear so many people saying that, but they're still chasing. Fuck, guys, I was saying that and I was still chasing, right? The creative identity is attraction. Like I said, this is when the synchronicities happen, the random things happen, the referrals come in, that person you haven't talked to in 7 years calls you and asks you to list their home, that client who ghosted you 6 months ago finally pays their invoice, right? Like that's the creative plane, because again, your energy is doing the work. I see this a lot of my clients where they're working way less and they're achieving more. I have one client who's getting ready. March is going to be her biggest month of closings ever. It will be her biggest income month ever. And girlfriend has been out of the office 3 weeks since the end of December, right? And she hasn't done any more work on her business. In fact, she has done less in her business, but because her energy is aligned and she's wearing that creator identity, these opportunities are just falling into her lap. I'm using air quotes, right, for her, but it's because her energy is doing the work. This is also when people really, truly know their worth, right? When you don't take the shitty client just because you need the business, right? When you don't take the deal that's not a good deal just because you need the opportunity. When you don't lower your rates just to, make somebody else happy. When you don't negotiate your commission just because you need a commission, right? So those are what it looks like to really operate in this creative field where, again, you're just magnetic as fuck. And those people, you follow those people, you spend time with those people. So how do we step into that? Let's talk about that. How do we step into the creative identity? Well, the first thing we have to do is we have to detach from the fucking scoreboard. We have to detach from the scoreboard. It is very hard to not compete when you're looking at the scoreboard, right? And what I mean by looking at the scoreboard, again, that could be your bank account. It could be the revenue. It could be the rank in the business. It could be how many new followers did I get today, or whatever the case may be. We have to detach from that as a feeling of worthiness. I'm not saying we don't track the data or track the information. I'm not asking you to not look at your bank balance, right? What I'm asking you is to not make your bank balance have anything to do with your worthiness, right? Not letting your bank balance make you feel a certain way. Because if your bank balance has to be at a certain dollar amount for you to feel good, for you to feel safe, for you to feel secure, you're in competitive energy, right? You're in the competitive plane. Because what we want, the goal here, the true uncensored self, is to get to the point where it doesn't matter what's going on in the outside world. I am my own source of safety, security, abundance, opportunity, right? So when we really think about, not looking at the outside world to tell us if we're doing a good job, if we're worthy of love, if we're good enough, that's the first thing, right? We have to detach from that. We have to stop. One of the first books, I'm sure I've shared this with you guys before, my mentor had me read when we started working together back in 2021 was Codependent No More. Because most successful women are codependent with their business. And what that means is when the business is doing well, you feel okay. When the business is doing shitty, you feel like shit. That is codependency. When you need something outside of you to behave a certain way for you to feel good, you are codependent and you will always be dependent on that outside thing. And so what we want to do is detach that, right? I'm not saying we don't work on that. I'm not saying you no longer want to make a lot of money or have a successful business or go after the things you want to go after. It's those things are no longer the scorecard that tell you that you're good enough. And so, I have to ask, like I say this all the time, we're not chasing things, we're chasing a feeling. You think a certain dollar amount is going to make you feel a certain way, right? Like you think X number of dollars in the bank equals safety and security, right? That's not true. That's absolutely not true, right? Because there have been plenty of people who had a shit ton of money and blew it or lost it, right? Or, there's all sorts of shit that can happen. Or there's people who have less than what you think is that safe and secure number in their bank account and they feel safe and secure every single day, right? So redefining what that looks like for you and not letting that scorecard drive, am I good enough? Am I worthy? Because when the scorecard drives, again, you're in the competitive plane and you'll always feel the need to push more, work more, so that I can finally feel whatever it is that you want to feel. And so that's kind of the first thing we have to do. From there, the second thing here is to stop waiting and start deciding, right? And again, whole episode on waiting and wanting. But that's what we do. We're waiting for our opportunity. We're waiting for our ship to come in. We're waiting to, for it to, come into our lap, and waiting energy can only get more waiting. When I'm waiting for somebody to show up, I know that it's not here, right? If I'm meeting a friend for coffee and I'm waiting for her, she's not here, right? Versus just going and sitting at the coffee shop, knowing that my friend is going to show up. I'm not checking my phone. I'm not like, oh my God, where is she? I wonder if I'm in the wrong place. Like, it's just like, okay, I'm meeting my friend. And so, I'm waiting to do A, B, C, X, Y, Z in the business versus I've decided that I'm going to do A, B, C, X, Y, Z in the business. It's not up for discussion. Like, I'm fucking deciding, instead of waiting for the deals to come to you, you're deciding that the deals are already here and you're already hitting that goal. And that energy is extremely fucking different. It's the energy or the identity of somebody who already has it or is certain that it's coming versus this energy of, I don't know, I'm not sure, I'm wishing, hoping, praying, my fingers are crossed, right? And then from there, the next thing we need to do is shift our energy, right? Shifting our energy right now, because your energy is you're either in, scarcity, lack, limitation, fulfillment, I'm not good enough, or you're in abundance, flow, happiness, whatever that looks like for you. So, and this is a moment by moment decision. Energy management is a moment by moment decision. And when I first heard this, I was like, are they serious? Because I don't know about you, but my head, I think a lot. I get a lot of thoughts. There's a lot happening. There's 6 different tabs open up there. There's 60 different tabs open up there, right? And so how can I possibly manage all of that? But that's the work, right? That's why I always talk so much about nervous system regulation and meditation and breath work and all these different tools to help us slow down and feel safe in our body, because you can't manage the chaos in your brain if your nervous system is dysregulated, right? Like if you're constantly in fight or flight, it's really hard to manage the thoughts of you're not good enough, you're not going to hit it, it's not going to happen. That's very, very challenging. When your nervous system is regulated, right, and you're operating from this creative energy, you can see those thoughts and not react to them, ultimately, is what we're trying to do here, right? So energetically, this is it, right? Like, what's the energy that you move through the world? Do you move through the world with stress, anxiety, overwhelm, frustration, and rushing? Or do you move through the world, again, in a way where everything always works out? I have plenty of time. Everything's always, everything always works out exactly the way it's supposed to. And knowing that I'm always going to get everything done that I need to get done. And if I don't get it done, that it wasn't important, right? Like really anchoring into those beliefs. So I think that just to give you guys just a few more exercises, how do we manage this, right? So some practical exercises for you is really digging into your identity, right? Who am I when I'm not being who the world taught me to be? I built an entire program. It's a 28-day self-study program called Identity to answer this question, because the number of women that I talk to that don't even know what the fuck they want is crazy town, right? They don't even know who they are anymore because they're so wrapped up in this competitive identity and this competitive plane, and they're so addicted to the external things that they really struggle to break apart who they are and break up with that identity, because it's scary. But that's a really great one, is doing some journaling, doing some reflection. If you feel called, you should absolutely join my identity program. It's really fucking good. But that's kind of a really practical exercise. Another one is, again, meditation and or breath work or some sort of nervous system regulation. Literally, guys, go to Google and Google nervous system regulation and find something that works for you. But regulating your nervous system is the number one thing that you need to do to get out of this competitive energy and this constant go, 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 right? But here's what I want us to take away from this, and competitive versus creative plane, is that everything that you want, it's already inside of you, right? It's already inside of you. Everything that you need. You're brilliant. You're incredible. You're amazing. God made you that way. You don't have to earn it. There is no dollar amount in your bank account or number of deals or number on the scale or, compliments from the outside world that are all of a sudden going to make you feel worthy, right? All of that is that's an inside job. You have to believe that you are worthy. You have to believe that you are amazing. You have to believe that people want to work with you. I talk about that a lot in the episode on, become somebody people want to hire, when we talk about how do we use this work in business, right? You have to believe that you are somebody that people want to hire. That's what you have to do before anybody's ever going to feel comfortable hiring you, right? So we have to stop chasing this external validation and start giving it to ourselves. Right? Because again, what we're chasing is a feeling, because we think that thing is going to give us that feeling. When we learn how to give that feeling to ourselves, right? That feeling of security, that feeling of love, that feeling of abundance, that feeling of joy, happiness, fulfillment, that feeling of I fucking did it, right? Like you have to practice giving that to yourself first. Okay? You have to practice giving that to yourself first, and then you can start moving through the world on this creative plane. But as long as you need the outside world to look a certain way for you to feel okay, you're always going to be in the competitive. So I hope this was helpful. Again, this was outside of my comfort zone. I stuck to my notes, damn it. But I would love to hear from you guys. You know, one of my favorite things is I shared this in another podcast, right? Like I just love talking to people and connecting with people. So if this resonates with you, if you are somebody who's like really stuck in this competitive plane, let's talk, because that was so me. I honestly think that's what took me so long to go on this journey. And so long is bullshit, right? I mean, it's 4 years, but to think how much growth I have achieved in 4 years and how incredibly happy I am in my life now, when before I wasn't at all. So like I have done this work. I have been where you are. So I think to me, that's what I can offer you, is that I've done this. I've been there. I understand exactly how you're feeling right now. And I understand that you're listening to this with a healthy amount of skepticism. You're listening to this with a healthy amount of, that sounds fucking nice, but you don't understand my story, because that was me. Like, that sounds great. That sounds amazing. I would fucking love that. But let me tell you what's going on in my life. And I promise you, there's nothing going on in your life that this work can't fix. There's nothing going on in your life that this work can't make better. There's nothing going on in your life that you can't turn around and change dramatically by operating from your creative plane, from your creator identity instead of from the human identity. It's just training your brain, calming your nervous system down enough, and training your brain to see yourself as the creator of your reality. Like, that's the secret sauce. And having a mentor, having a guide makes it faster, makes it easier, makes it hurt a little less. But I can't do the work for you, right? Like, even with my clients, I mean, my clients are fucking killing it. But the truth of the matter is, if you enter in a container like this and you don't do the work, it's not going to work for you, just like anything else. There's no magic wand in this work other than facing yourself and being really fucking honest with yourself about who you are and what you want. So I'm excited to hear your feedback on this one. Again, it feels a little bit different than some of the others I've done. And guys, I'm always open to hearing from you. Like, hey, right, create an episode for me about this, because I would love to. I have ideas for days, but I would love to hear what's relevant for you. But thanks so much, guys. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for tuning in to the Uncensored Self Podcast. If you're walking away with a new perspective, some fresh inspiration, or the push you needed to show up as your uncensored self, I'd love to hear about it. Share this episode, leave a review, and don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Remember, success isn't about following somebody else's rules. It's about owning who you are, deciding what you want, and going after it unapologetically. Until next time, keep leading, keep creating, and stay uncensored.